Andrew, the household consumption stat I think is really telling, because it says even with all these rate rises, December last year, March this year in that quarter, discretionary spending was still high. It was driving household consumption and then fell off a cliff. As soon as we realised rate rises were not done, people were in the brace position. So while banks are saying, hey, defaults are not on the up, people are obviously, this is the point in time which they said, geez, we're in trouble here. The household budget's in trouble.
Well, it was the 4.5% unemployment forecast that they've retained out of hope, because that's what will drive inflation down. So that's the question there. I wanted to say something on petrol excise. I think we have here a question from Joel Philp to the Treasurer around, given the papers say that inflation is being driven by the price of petrol, would he consider a petrol excise change? Let's have a look at that.
When it comes to fuel excise, there have been wild swings in prices that people have been paying at the bowser. In my neck of the woods, almost $2.40, got all the way down to $1.90, and that's only in the course of a few months. And that, I think, gives you a sense of, even if you made a change like the one that you are talking about, that could be easily impacted in either direction.
All right, important not to forget, we're 15 to 17 months probably from an election. If you put it on a petrol excise cut now, which costs an absolute fortune of the budget, you're just going to have to put the tax back on in about 6 months or 9 months, or certainly before an election. That's the main reason they're not doing it, Tom.
I think that's a fair point, isn't it? Because timing is everything. And to that end, Laura, isn't this sublime timing, I'd suggest, for the coalition, that right when a big tax cut comes in, Labor says, oh, no cost of living, no more ones now, we've got them in the system. But the biggest one by far is a tax cut that Labor doesn't really want to implement as is in the next budget. I guess at some point we'll have to start talking about it and why it's a good idea.
Yeah, well, look, stage 3 tax cuts were asked about in that media conference. Jim Chalmers went straight for the line that we've heard from him say ad nauseum. Our position on that one hasn't changed. When you look at this budget and where we are going into the latter end of this election cycle, I agree with Andrew Clennell here. It would be political suicide for them to do it, given where the polls are and given all the figures that we've just discussed. What's lost in this argument when you talk about stage 3 tax cuts is that they are cut right down to those earning above $45,000 a year. Yes, it goes to the higher end, but it is right across the board. In this inflation environment, as they're implemented, this government would surely like to see inflation back at that 2.5%, back between that 2 to 3% band. That would be, easier to sell it. But when you look at the political reality in Parliament as well, the crossbench, the Teals, they're split on this too. Particularly, you've got to look at the seats that they hold. They hold seats along the coast that are the wealthiest seats and in the country. So they are not wanting to see a slash to stage 3 tax cuts as well. I just don't think at this point they're going to do it, Tom. I think they'll have to stick with it.